Okay, there we go. I had a little trouble with my internet, so now I am fully connected. Hello, everyone. It is so good to see you. I am coming live from spring break, which it's a bit of bless the mess because vacation with toddlers is a little bit more of a trip than it is a vacation. But I found it essential to take a break from spring break to welcome Dr. Daniel Amen on All Good Reads because his new book, is no doubt going to be another one of his best segment on it. And I wanted to make sure that we had more time than just the 2-minute TV segment. Daniel, it's so good to see you. Can you hear me? He said, hold on. Okay. So he's getting his earphones. So instead of me.
Hello.
Hi. There we go. Hi.
Sorry.
Okay, good. It is so fabulous to see your face. Daniel texted me moments before a picture of he and I from 1 year ago today when we were sitting on set talking about the end of mental illness. So how appropriate that 1 year later, your next best-selling book, Your Brain is Always Listening. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty excited about the dragons and actually having puppet here.
I love the dragon.
My
and we'll
favorite.
Explain what it is to everybody.
It's the Ancestral Dragon, where the issues aren't yours. They're somebody else's.
Yeah, so this is why I wanted to have you on again. So we did it listening on Morning Express, and it's impossible in 2.5 minutes to get through really all of these dragons that you're talking about. And so before we get into all of the dragons, can you explain to people, for when they just tuned in, what they represent and how you present solutions in the book to tame them?
Well, your brain is listening to influences, past, present, and future. You don't understand them. You can't properly direct your mind. And the first part of the book is the dragons from the past. These are the big psychological issues that many people deal with. And I think of them dragons breathing fire on your emotional brain. And if you don't tame them, they can ruin your happy relationships, your work. And as I thought about it, they're big dragons. And mine is the first one. It's the abandoned, invisible, and insignificant dragon, being one of 7 children, having 5 sisters, sort of getting lost, having a dad that worked all the time. I felt very insignificant. Now, there's an upside for all of the dragons in that I basically spent my life working to make a difference in the lives of other people to be significant. And so for all of the dragons, I talk about their origin story, where they come from, what triggers them, how causes us to react, how to tame them, their upside, and even what movies they like. The abandoned, invisible, and insignificant dragon loves underdog movies. So I must have seen Rocky 50 times. I just love the movies where people overcome things. The next one, do you want me to go through a couple of them?
Yeah, I want to start with that first one, the abandonment, because I think people would be surprised to hear someone like you has a significant dragon that you battle, right? Like you're somebody that has it all together. You're the expert, right?
You know, whenever you think someone has it all together, what it means is you know them. Yeah. That normal is a myth. I often say normal's a city in Illinois. It's a setting on a dryer. There are no normal people, right? We all have thought that person has it all together, but that just means you don't know them.
I think that's such a good point because vulnerability, I always say, is the way to connect. vulnerable and admitting some of your weaknesses is the way people get to know you. And so we talk about this quiz you have on your website where people can learn what are the dragons that they are battling. So yours is the abandonment dragon. What about the incest? When we're really blaming our ancestors for some of the problems that we have, and what might that be? Some of the issues that we are trying to. Which dragon would that be?
So the ancestral dragon, I actually think, is one of the most interesting dragons, where the issues you struggle with are in fact not your issues. That there's something, demons your mother dealt with or your grandfather dealt with. I know you've interviewed Tana, my wife. Her grandmother grew up during World War I famine in Lebanon. And she was lost in the mountains for 3 days, and she suffered with PTSD her whole life, and has always been someone who's prepared for disaster. And I'm like, why are you prepared for disaster? Don't I take good care of you? And she goes, you just never know when it's going to come. So she'd spend all this money, and I'd get irritated with her. And then the pandemic hit. But she has literally been preparing for the pandemic for 3 generations since her grandmother went through that very difficult time. And what we know is children and grandchildren of survivors of the Holocaust, of survivors of 9/11 even, or the genocides in Kenya, that we feel that for generations of people. And your family history is really important to getting your own mind right.
What do you do if you know your family history and there is trauma? I mean, Tana's book that was out in January, Relentless Courage of, it's the second part, Relentless Courage
of a Scared Child.
And in it, she talks about her own trauma. But what do you do when you have had family trauma that stays with you? How do you tame that?
So you recognize it and you understand it's part of the story, but it's not all of your story. That you can tame it by understanding it. And when I wrote it out, it helped her so much. And there's an exercise in the new book on how to rewrite your story, how to tame the dragons. And then we're all authors of our own. And once it becomes conscious, you sort of don't have to tolerate it.
So sorry, the video's going in and out for people. Some people in the comments have said that it is. The Wi-Fi must be totally overloaded today. I've had no issues with Wi-Fi since I've been here, so I'm so sorry. Let's see if it keeps going out. But for now, can you talk to me about some of the other dragons and what you say to tame them?
So the dragon that's driving the epidemic of teenage suicide is the inferior or flawed dragon. It's where you're comparing yourself to other people in a way. And comparison is just so awful. And because of social media, we're having teenage girls attempt suicide more than ever before in history. And the pandemic certainly made it worse. But we're always comparing ourselves. I'm not smart enough. We learned that in school. I'm not tall enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not strong enough. And whenever we compare ourselves in a negative way, that dragon just makes us feel awful. And in each of the dragons, I talk about how it relates to me. I'm vulnerable in this book than any book I've ever written. And, and I was the shortest kid in my class. A number on boys. For girls, if they're the tallest one in their class, that does a negative number on them because you're always comparing. And, it caused a great unnecessary grief and sadness when you do. And then there's the most common of all the dragons, the anxious dragon, that's breathing fire every go. It affects, before the pandemic, Lynn, it affected 30% of the population. And now over half of us are struggling with anxiety of one form or another. And then wounded dragon, people who experience trauma in their past, which is really common. I've had 35,000 people to Dragon Quiz, knowyourdragons.com. And I think about 40% of people endorse the wounded dragon. I remember it can be you were sexually assaulted, you grew up in an alcoholic home, in a fire, flood, or earthquake. And we just had the 50th anniversary of the earthquake in Southern California. And I was near the epicenter. And I remember, I think I was 16 or 17, the house starts violently shaking in the morning. Sisters are screaming. And my dad comes out in his booming voice, "Don't worry, it's just an earthquake." And I started screaming louder. So crazy. But the wounded dragon, the shouldn't shaming dragon. I grew up Roman Catholic. My mother was very serious about the whole thing. And the shouldn't shaming dragon just lived in my house. It lived in my school. It lived at church. It's like, do this or else, should. Of course there are things you shouldn't do. Of course there are. You should feed your children and you should be nice to them and you shouldn't be husband. And of course, but it's not a good motivator of behavior. And shame just causes so much damage. When I had this fun interaction with Miley Cyrus when we did an Instagram live together, because she used to have the shouldn't shaming dragon. And I taught her to replace I should do this, with I want to do this. Or it fits my goals to do this. And if you don't want to, and it doesn't fit your goals to, then you really need to rethink those words. They may not be helpful to you.
Yeah, and one person is asking, why do you refer to them as dragons?
Well, who wrote Lord of the Rings said, it's not a story worth telling. There are no dragons. And given that I love Game of Thrones and dragons are mystical creatures, sort of like your mom, I thought it would just be a great analogy. And then I have a friend, Sharon May, who's a relationship counselor, who talked about the dragons from the past messing up relationships on one of my podcasts. And I love that analogy.
And I like that you can have stuffed animals associated with them. Props. I'm a very visual person. So when you had those, I thought that was really fun too. Someone is asking what your views are on acupuncture for anxiety. I know there is an anxious dragon and about that. So what are your views on solutions for that?
So I'm actually a big fan of acupuncture for pain, for resistant depression that doesn't get better with the simple thing. Patient recently where nothing I was doing worked, and I found her an acupuncturist, and it was miraculous for her. Anxiety, so much. I like diaphragmatic breathing. in a very specific way. And you just have to do this for 2 minutes, 2 or 3 times a day. 3 seconds in, take a big breath, and then hold it just for a second. Take 6 seconds to breathe out. If you take twice as long to breathe out as you breathe in, it'll trigger a relaxation response in your body. How cool is that? Simple, it's not addictive, it works. That's so helpful.
How long is it to see results? When you say tame the dragons, and you do give solutions in this book, and I think that's the most important thing. It's not just to say, okay, here's what you can do to tackle them and tame them. How long does something like this take? Is this a lifetime of work? Even Tana has talked about, you know, she's not over the.
So she has 10 of the dragons. And when you read her book, The Relentless Courage of a Scared Child, you really see why she has them. You know, you can't say to somebody, eat us today, and you're just going to be healthy going forward. You need to develop practices to keep dragons under control. So it's really a daily practice. But I open the book with a story of Jimmy, who's the son of the Mexican mafia leader in Los Angeles. And he grew up with an insane amount of trauma, from having 12 SWAT officers break through his front door and point, you know, their weapons at he and his father, to being involved in car chases, to being kidnapped, to witnessing his grandmother being raped. I mean, it's just, and I saw him actually on Halloween a year and a half ago, and he out of the hospital for being suicidal. And the thing I loved is Jimmy just did everything I asked him to do. There's an exercise in the book on give me 100 of your worst thoughts. He wrote down 100 of his worst thoughts, and he had 100 of them. And we killed each one of them. There's a section on how to kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. And within 4 months, he's radically better. Today, he's not even the same person. But it's still a practice. It's still not believing every stupid thing you think, meditating, exercising, eating right. It's a practice. You really develop a value of brain and body health, because they really do work together. And so, like, you eat right and you exercise because you want to be healthy and you want to look healthy. You got to do the same thing for your mind. These mental workouts are just as important, and they're not hard. Like I talk about, I start every day with today is going to be a great day. I got to hang out with you. It's one of my favorite things to do. I finish every day with what went well today. Every night when I go to bed, what went well today. And it's like, for me, it's now like a treasure hunt. I've even the little micro moments of things that went well. But if I don't do that, my mind will go to darkness, because we evolved in an anxious time, and the brain's sort of wired to pay attention to what's wrong. And if you don't reach it, it will cause you to suffer.
You've given me that advice before, and yesterday was the absolute perfect example of this. You know, we're on spring break. I started all of this. It's not a vacation, it's a trip. It's a family bonding moment. But yesterday, everything went wrong, and it was so frustrating. And even at the end of the day, my 5-year-old said to me, he's like, "Mom, I'm annoyed." And I said, I am. Things went wrong, didn't it? But let's sit and talk about what went right. What did we love about today? And we talked about 4 or 5 things that we really loved. You taught me, and I have to say, It works so incredibly well. We all went to bed appreciative of the 4 things that we could find that did go well that day. And it is that positive thinking that I just think makes such a difference. And you were the one that taught me that. One person, before I get to the next thing, is asking, when you were talking about the breathing exercises, is it inhaling in through the nose, out through the
nose, out through your mouth? But really, the important thing is being intentional. And this takes 11 seconds, right? 3 seconds in, hold it for 1. 6 seconds out, hold it for 1. It's 11 seconds. You do that 10 times, which is less than minutes, your whole body begins to relax. And don't we need that when we're really being assaulted with, and I literally worry about my news anchor friends, because when you're reporting, you're generally not reporting on all the warm, funny, happy stories. You're talking about what's wrong. And you and I've talked about, how to shift that, to talk about what, but it's so important. And you think of people that cover wars or cover natural disaster, to feed that in your mind over and over again is traumatic. So this practice becomes even more important.
It's one thing that someone's chiming in, 21-hour days in the last couple of weeks due to busy session. If it's any profession, especially in the healthcare field right now, and how a lack of sleep, how does it affect the brain and how can it be fixed? And they're specifically asking with ADD, sleep can affect anyone in a negative way.
People with ADD actually have more trouble sleeping. They have trouble going to sleep. And once they do, they go into deeper stages of sleep longer, and they have trouble waking up. Sleep's one of the pillars of brain health. If you're not sleeping, like the grief and loss dragon in that book, I say the number one thing for grief and loss is fix sleep first. And when you sleep, your brain cleans, it washes itself. It actually gets it ready the next day. It consolidates memory. So having a practice, hypnosis, meditation, diaphragmatic breathing right at bedtime, your brain going in the right direction. And I'm not a fan of sleeping pills like Ambien, because once you start, you won't be able to stop it. I'm a fan. I like melatonin, magnesium, theanine, 5-HTP, all of those things. Brand new study on ashwagandha show significant improvement.
Yeah, and someone is actually saying, I don't want to take medicine. Is there a natural remedy? And you're talking specifically about melatonin and all of the things you can actually natural before you have to go to medication.
Yeah, we make something at BrainMD called Put Me to Sleep. And I love it. I developed it with our sleep doctor, Shane Criado, so actually. And it's got low dose melatonin. Actually, less is more with melatonin. 5-HTP, so as much GABA to settle down your brain, theanine from green tea, and magnesium. It's like 60% of the population magnesium. And when you're low in magnesium, you're anxious and you can't sleep. And you also get muscle twitches. So if you have muscle twitches, you're anxious and you can't sleep. Magnesium is really important. And the type of magnesium you take is important, because you should be taking magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate.
And you also do that through BrainMD. You have magnesium saffron, which is another mood booster as well.
And there's a new study out that 2 of our magnesium chewables has been found to be a treatment for depression when people are low in magnesium. So it's like, why not? Side effect of magnesium. If you get too much, you'll get diarrhea. So you just know if you get that, it's too much. But it's so helpful for so many people.
Let's get back to the dragons. When has 10 of the dragons. I took the test. I have a couple of dragons. I'm not going to say how many I have. What does it mean if you have a lot of them? I mean, that might feel overwhelming. Like, is there something wrong with me that I have a ton of dragons?
Well, the average is 6. And so all of us have issues, right? I mean, we started out by saying normal sort of a myth. And it just means there's work to do to feel happy, to your best. And you're just like everybody else. Now, Tana has 10, and she's an awesome human being who I adore, but it just means there's work to do.
Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of doing the work and getting the help to do it. Dr. Amen, a lot of people are chiming in here asking where they could to let people know how they can get Your Brain Is Always Listening, which is, in addition to where they can take the dragons.
Know Your
Go and do that.
Dragons.com. That's how you can take the quiz. You can get the book anywhere great books are sold, like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. But if you order it before March 7th, I have 4 free gifts for people. A free bottle of Happy Saffron, my favorite supplement. They go to brainisAlwaysListening.com and they can get those free gifts.
You're awesome.
I adore. Thank you so much.
Yesterday.
It's great
I'm so
to see
honored to have you on to talk about it and get their copy of the book and start the good work for all of us to be better people.
Thank you, my friend.
Great to see you. Tell Tana I say hello.
I will.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.